Since I've got so much of this brass to turn, the next to turn, I'm using a new tool we acquired. The necks on this nozzler brass was pretty thick, so I'm actually cutting about 4/1000 off the dang thing. So we decided to go with something a little more automatic and something a little less manual. So we picked up this Hornady neck turning tool. Figured I'd give it a try. I usually do these things by hand, but I've got a lot of brass to cut. This is the brass for the 6 Creedmoor that we're going to be running in that Savage, and I just kind of wanted to show you what this little tool was doing. And so far, I actually kind of like it. It's cutting pretty good. Quicker, that's for sure. Takes a little bit to get it set up right, but once you got it set up, it's pretty much good to go. Now I've trimmed all this brass to length. When you set this thing up, you want to come in right down at the bottom of the neck, just about where you're on the shoulder there. They have different angle cutters depending on the angle of your shoulder, so you want to make sure you have the right one in there. But it's important to have the length set on this thing properly, so you come to the same stop spot properly each time when you're doing this. So all these have been trimmed to length. And I just put a little bit of slow, steady pressure on it, just enough to kind of get this thing cut, and you can hear that it's actually cutting a lot off of these things. And I use a little 4/0 steel wool on there just to kind of burnish it a little bit, kind of clean it. And then it gets run through our mandrel. Kind of let it stretch out, and this is the expander mandrel for the actual Sinclair neck turning kit. And then on to the next one. So this little Hornady tool is definitely making things a lot quicker. I'm actually thinking I kind of like it. Now even just running the expander in the necks, I know it's pressing it out, but I can tell a difference in some of this brass already. Some of it kind of goes in easy, and I can tell it's working right. And some of them going kind of hard, I can tell it's just not wanting to work right. So I'm guessing that's the temper on the actual brass itself. So I've been kind of calling those off to the sides. The ones that go in there nice and easy and feeling fine, and the ones that aren't feeling so fine, I'm going to keep those off the side, and I'll use those for fowlers or siders or break-in stuff. So sometimes it's handy to kind of call as you're even doing something as simple as this. A little steel wool. Now see, now that one right there, I can tell it's not wanting to expand real good. Let it sit there for a few seconds. Okay, it feels a little better, but still doesn't quite feel as easy as some of those other ones, so we'll put that over on that side and continue on. Okay, now that we've got our necks trimmed down on that brass for the 6mm Creedmoor, the next thing we need to do is find out how long these cartridges need to be, so we need to find the lands on that rifle. But the first thing I want to do is make sure that chamber and everybody's clean in there. The factory usually test fires a few rounds through the rifles to make sure they function properly and everything, and so we're going to want to clean out the stuff that's in that barrel and get a good measurement, and I'll show you how I get my overall length measurements, and we'll get it on from there. I've already cleaned the Bagheera and done the measurements on that, so the next one up is the Savage, but I wanted to kind of show you what it looks like inside the barrel after the factory's done their little testing with it, and you can obviously tell they're not using a real high quality powder to do that. So let's clean this thing and see what those patches look like. I always use these bore guides. I get them from Sinclair. And this just happens to be a regular 308 bore guide, which happens to fit in these actions nicely. And I put a little rag under there trying to stop stuff. I use the Dewey coated one-piece rods. I've always been a fan of those. They don't mark up the barrel any or anything. And hopefully they're long enough. Sometimes you might want to get the longer ones if you get some long barrels. Make sure you get through all right. And I put a little plastic jug on the end down there. Make sure I don't splatter everything everywhere. And I just kind of pierce it. Set it in the guide, and I've got these little ports that I can put my solvent in. And I just kind of get it good and wet. And run it on through. And let me snatch that patch out of there and show you what it looks like. There's the first patch out of that barrel. I'm guessing the second patch ain't going to look a whole lot better. Now that it's got some solvent in there, it's kind of soaking. So let's run another one through it. And I don't know if that camera's actually picking this up or not, but there's a little bit of blue in there already from the copper. So we're going to make sure we get all the powder out of that, and we're going to go after it with a little bit different copper solvent and get all the copper out of it until we've got her nice and clean. The solvent I'm using is from Shooter's Choice, and that does a pretty good job of cleaning it out. So we're going to get it good and cleaned up, and I'll show you how we get our measurements. Here's a shot of our patches we used to clean out that brand new barrel. See, they started out kind of dark. Hopefully this camera will pick up the blue color in there, pulling the copper out, but just keep cleaning it till you get on down to where it's nice and clean. Okay, we've got our barrel and our chamber cleaned out real nice. see if I can show you how I check my chambering for overall length. I'm using a cleaning rod here. It's got a solid end on it. That's a male fitting for the Jags. I'm going to actually insert this thing in the barrel, and I've got the action closed, but I can move the action around, and I can move the rod around, and I can tell I'm right on the end of the action there. But I come down and chamber this thing. Now I've got that cleaning rod right up against the face of that bolt, so all I need to do is mark the end of the rod, and I usually use a piece of white tape, and I could come in there and very carefully run the edge of the white tape right at the end of the barrel on the rod. So that is my length back to the end of the bolt. At that point, I'll slide the rod out, and I'll take one of the bullets that we're going to be using. That's one of our 105 burgers, and I will insert it into the chamber of the rifle. I'll take a pencil, a brand new pencil that hadn't been sharpened, and I'll actually use it to hold my projectile in there. But the trick is to get it actually in the chamber to start with. Then once I get it started, I can simply take this pencil and get my bullet to have it set right in the chambering. By holding just a little bit of pressure on there, on the pencil, I can get that bullet centered up. In fact, I can take my little flashlight and look in there, and I can see that bullet's perfectly centered in there, and it's actually laying in the lands. So back in with my pencil, I can take my cleaning rod and just hold a little bit of light pressure on my pencil, and I come back to where I can touch the tip of that bullet, and I can actually go back and forth with the cleaning rod and the pencil and set however much I want tension actually in those lands. Now I'm just barely touching. Now I can push harder on this pencil if I wanted to and seat it in further, but I just want to know right there where it touches, and right there it's touching. Simple, just put a little pressure on your pencil, just push in on your cleaning rod a little bit. You can actually rock the thing, but you can tell that right where that bullet hits something solid. So that distance from the end of the barrel to that tape is actually the overall length of that chambering. So I'll just carefully come out my calipers to the edge of that tape, and bingo, there's my overall measurement. Okay, now that we have that measurement that we got with our little cleaning rod trick there, and I've used that trick for quite some time, and I've always had some pretty good luck with it. Yeah, there's other ways of doing it, but that just seems to work for me, and I don't have to buy a different piece of brass every time I change caliber that has a different size hole with threads in there for other tools. But I'll just take the bullet and seat it down to that number in a piece of brass, and then I can use my comparator on the thing and get the measurement that I'm actually looking for. And I'll make notes in my data book, and I usually throw the date on there for any kind of a reference. And I'll just end up keeping that dummy round as a comparator for my stuff as I go. We've got plenty of rounds loaded up for that thing for break-in. So we just need some decent weather to get out there and break that barrel in. I've got, as you can tell, it's got a scope on it. We ended up putting a Diamondback Tactical scope on there. That is their 30 millimeter tube. It's a 6x24 50 millimeter in MOA, and that is a first focal plane scope. So there's another one we'll have that's on the first focal plane. Like I said, we just need a little bit of warm weather. Get out there, get the barrel broke in, and then we can start working on some loads. So if you want to follow us along in our little series we've got here, subscribe, hit the notify button so you know when we put out our next video, and we'll continue on with our little project we've got going on, and catch you next time.